Good evening, this is Felicity. I am talking to you from my library, and I am talking to you who I haven't spoken to for quite a while. It's been a bit. Anyway, this video is gonna be a mixture of a whole bunch of different books that is a small sampling of what's come into the house, what I've read, various other things since the last time, which was almost a year ago. Oops. Oh well. Anyway, so one of the things that's happened this last year is that I have the opportunity to acquire a fairly interesting collection of books on music, mostly on violins. And I've got a couple of them here. I'll show them to you all. We'll see how long this takes. Anyway, this is not all of them, but this is definitely a sampling of some of the books that I've acquired. This is the first in a set of four books on violin making, Italian violin making. This was written by Eric Blott, and they're big, they're beautiful, they are full of pictures of violin makers, violins, and other interesting assorted bits. Now this is pretty standard type of format for this kind of a book. It shows the important things, which is the violin body in its totalness on the top, the back, the scroll, measurements, and these are all going to be pretty famous makers, although there's others that are not quite so famous, and I have all four of them. Oh boy. In the same line, I have a book. That was part of a set of a lot of books that I acquired. This one was from a slightly different source. This is an original, The Violin Makers of the Guarneri Family, and this was published by Hill and Sons, and I'm really happy to have it. It's I've got a facsimile of the Strad one, but this Guarneri one is pretty special. It was published in get the title page eventually. This was published in, I don't know, 19 something. Well, let's see. How about 1931? Really pretty, nice paper, pre-war sort of, and Hill and Sons were amongst the great violin shops, makers, but also violin shops from last century. And this one is, the pictures have gotten a little bit old and dated, but the book itself is a sample. And it's one of these ones that have these wonderful tissues here. The pictures themselves are a little old and tired, but for 1931, the pictures are fabulous. The book is in really good shape. I think it used to have a box. It doesn't have the box anymore, but other than some library issues where it's rubbed, been used, been looked at, the book is still in pretty good shape, and it's the Guarneri book from the Hill family. Oh boy. The last of the big violin books I'm going to show you. This is another volume which was part of set 4. This is the Le Canu pair. This is Mr. and Mrs. Le Canu, and they did a series. They did a series of essays on, or I should say essay, but like pictures. They did a series of studies on contemporary French violin and bow makers, and this one happens to be the bow makers. And it doesn't look like very much to those of you who don't know anything about bows, but it was really exciting for me to see this because, for one thing, it's very hard to find one in the wild, and for another, it's full of bow makers that I know them or their bows. There are many of them still alive, and the pictures are actually pretty good. This particular series also has some very, very nice pictures of nice pictures of the violin makers, the bow makers, violin makers themselves, but also pictures of the old workshops, which is pretty slick. I'll see if I can find one for you. Contemporary workshops, and then there's a couple of pictures of the old workshops, which you'd say, wow, can you say slave labor? No, not really. You can call it apprenticeship, and I'm just flipping through. It's really, really pretty cool. So this is 3 of a whole series, a lot of large, really excellent books on violin makers. All right, I had one more violin book, which was more maybe practical. This is the Encyclopedia of the Violin by Alberto Bachmann, and I found out about this one many years ago when I was in high school and was writing a paper. We were permitted for our last paper of the year to write about anything we wanted, and since at that time I'd been already working at a violin shop for several years, I thought, well, that would be pretty cool. So this was one of my sources, and he says true. It's an encyclopedia of the violin, so not just violin making, but listing of the names of the parts, the names of what goes into it. For example, this is the contents: Brislewood, Campeche wood, Castle yellow, cinnabar, dragon's blood. Really? No, not really. But it also has little sections on the actual art of making music, and then a big section on the back on famous violinists. This was really fun to revisit. This one came from the same collection of violin source material, and it happened to be in that same collection that I purchased some items of, and that was in it. Very happy to have that one. Okay, so another, and I was making piles of piles. This is one I can't remember. I don't think I actually showed this one on my BookTube channel, but this one is an absolutely delightful book by Una Woodruff. She did the pictures and also the text, and it's not a piss take. It's kind of a funny, humorous, and sympathetic parody of Pliny the Elder's natural history. The pictures are worth it they're worth the price of admission. I'm actually pretty sure that I found out about this book through Mupplewick's channel. I'm not really sure. John can correct me on that if that wasn't him, but I'm pretty sure I saw about this book there. Could be wrong. Anyway, these are all. This is presuming a voyage, which Una Woodruff, in her Latin manifestation, as she has a identity of Una Silvana. Yes, Una the wood woman, and the format is you get the picture on one side and you have the Latin text, which has been translated, and each of these. So this is the journey. I, Gaius Plinius Secundus, and my two companions, the scholar Carolus Andrivius and the artist Una Silvana, began our journey in the 12th year of the reign of Claudius. Our ship, the Aelgibus, was crewed by 12 trusted slaves who have become freemen in respect of their loyal service. We set sail on the first day of May from the port of Mycenium and came first to the island of Melita. Now, this is supposed to be a true and a factual account of their journey by ship to all of these islands, which we know are imaginary, or they are fantastical, and all of the animals and plants and insects and whatever that were found on it were all imaginary. Some of them are just crazy. Well, Hyperborean frogs, a butterfly plant, dragonfly plant, Hyperborea, hua fish. There's a couple of really hideous ones. And of course, boy, met dragons, because, I mean, yeah, you go traveling and here be dragons. So this is a really tasty book, and I was delighted to find it. A lot of my books now also have covers on them, because one of the other things I discovered in this last year has been the virtue of covering my books. And I have rolls of covering material now in my workroom, and so my books are getting protected. There you go. So that's Una Woodruff. That's a really fun one. Read that one a couple of times. It doesn't take much reading. It's really very straightforward, but it is really fun. Okay, so carrying on with my miscellany here, my most recent reads are actually not. Here's two that were finished and one that's not finished. I went on a little vacation, which of course I took books with me. What else do I do on a vacation? I took some books, of which 5 are finished and a couple are still on my way through. One of which is Thomas Pynchon's Mason-Dixon. That's a really excellent one, and I'm kind of going through it slowly because, when it's done, I don't have very many more Pynchons to read. a couple of other ones that I did start and finish while I was on vacation. Fred Stark, one of my superheroes for literate travelers. I have not all but many of her works. This one was excerpts, which I think she excerpted herself, and I wouldn't say they're highlights, but they're interesting excerpts from other works of hers, which I also have. But this one was paperback, and I didn't mind taking it on a vacation, and it was really, really tasty. So, for example, there are excerpts from Letters from Syria, Baghdad Sketches, Valley of the Assassin, Traveler's Prelude, and so on, including one from Dust in the Lion's Paw. I don't have all of them, but I have many, and they are marvelous. She lived a long and active life and saw a lot, did a lot, and is one of the characters that I admire, one of the authors that I admire tremendously. Some of what she writes, of course, is now dated, and some of it rubs a little bit wrong, but she was in earnest and sincere, and very fine writer, and she writes about the places that she traveled to. So Fred Stark's Journeys at Echo was great. Another one which I should have read a long time ago was Mrs. Dalloway. Don't really need to say much about that, except it's classic Virginia Woolf. It was not really what I expected. It was a lot better. I expect great things of Virginia Woolf, and this one I wolfed down. Sorry, bad, terrible pun. Should be now. Anyway, so Mrs. Dalloway is now goes back on the Virginia Woolf shelf. She's finished. I still have a few of hers I haven't read, but this one was worth waiting for. All right. And a big old chonker from Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex. I am trying to make my way through. It did pretty well on vacation, but it's a pretty solid work, and I'm enjoying is the wrong word. I am getting a lot out of it, but it's slow going. So there you go. That's on my not finished yet, but definitely not forgotten. I would say, well, she's described as being the first feminist and various different things, and I might add my own caveat to that, and which is that she didn't need to be a feminist because she did what she wanted to do, and fair bows to her for that. All right, so there is Simone de Beauvoir. Let me get my way through my little stack here. I'm not sure how long this is going to last. I've got a stack here, but I'm kind of going through them quickly. Another one that I had from my father's library was The Descent of the Dove by Charles Williams. They're all lacking their covers. I think my father was not a really big cover keeper, but he did have a very nice collection of Charles Williams, a little worse for wear in his library. This is Pellegrini and Cadet, and it's a pretty edition. It's pretty clean inside. He did not make any markings in this one, as he did in my copy of The Death of Hadrian, but it was his. And this is a Descent of the Dove, a short history of the Holy Spirit in the Church, and it is a interesting, sympathetic, and also very open eyes open survey of the history of the Church, the Catholic Church, for the most part. And he does not ignore the terrible abuses and corruption that has persisted with the Church through its history. But he's very sympathetic, and he believes that the organization is greater than the sum of their parts, and he does say that some of them are pretty flawed. And so I was very happy to read that. Happy to have it, of course, but very happy to have finally read it, and probably will again when it's sort of sunk in a little bit, because it's very much not my usual reading fare. So there you go. Descent of the Dove by Charles Williams. All right, and I have a complete collection of Robert Louis Stevenson's works, which I acquired from my local, I like to call it thrift shop, the Friends of the Berkeley Public Library, who always have wonderful things. And if you go there on the right day, which I can't anymore because they are open only the days I'm working, you will find sometimes sets, collections of perfectly lovely works for perfectly lovely prices. And this is one of them. So I decided I was going to set on this one as well. This is the title of the whole set, which is, of course, The Novels and Tales of Robert Louis Stevenson. Although there are other things, I think there's a life of his and other titles. That you could call those tales, but they're also non-fictions like Travels with a Donkey. Oh, it's lovely. So this particular one was called The New Arabian Nights, and I gobbled this one up last night. So this is the most recent finish of mine. Wow. I realized as I was reading it that it seemed to me that some of the characters were familiar. And after I had finished reading The Suicide Club, I realized that the last story in that I had been taken out of context in some other collection of short stories that I had read. And I then realized I really needed to read the entire book completely. There's definitely a taste of Sherlock Holmes, although the characters are a lot less cerebral and a lot more human in this collection. So this is the New Arabian Nights. It doesn't really, it has like a little tiny interlude from time to time about the Arabian who's telling these stories or hearing these stories. But this one contains The Suicide Club, 3 small tales from that, The Raja's Diamond, which is 4, including Story of a Young Man in Holy Orders. Oof, that was pretty good. Pavilion on the Links, which contains 9 tales. Then also Lodging for the Night, The Sire de Maletroit's Door, and Providence and the Guitar, which was enchanting. The Sire de Maletroit's Door, I looked that up because some of them I said, are these real? I mean, where do these names come from? Because Lodging for the Night actually was a story about François Villon, who was a real person. And the Sire de Maletroit's Door, when I looked it up, I realized that this had been turned into a movie called The Strange Door. So I had a total rabbit hole run looking up all the actors and how that had worked out for the Sire de Maletroit's Door. That was a really fun read, and there are so many more volumes. One of the whole shelves in the as you can see behind me, my beautiful cabinets back there. One of those cabinets is full of Robert Louis Stevenson, the entire collection. A lifetime of reading. What can I say? Anyway, I enjoyed this one, and I will probably read another soon. Okay, so. Also, some time ago, I saw that Sarah Bakewell, the perfectly splendid author of a work on Montaigne, the essays of Montaigne, and also How to Live Life by 100 Answers to the Question of Montaigne's, which is very good. Also, her pretty well known here in the States volume, The Existentialist Cafe. Yeah. So Sarah Bakewell in Humanly Possible, there you go. She says it right on the cover. 700 years of humanist free thinking, enquiry, and hope. And it was all that and more. She is a superlative writer. She obviously has scholarly creds because she writes with conviction and also with knowledge. And in the back, I can tell you a little bit about her in case any of you, for some inexplicable reason, have never heard of Sarah. Wandering childhood, growing up on the hippie trail through Asia and Australia. She studied philosophy at the University of Essex and worked for many years as a curator of early printed books at the Wellcome Library, London, before becoming a full-time writer. Her books include How to Live, A Life of Montaigne, which won the Duff Cooper Prize and the U.S. National Book Critics Circle Award, and At the Existentialist Cafe, a New York Times 10 Best Books of 2016. It's one of my favorite. And she was also among the winners of the 2018 Wyndham Campbell Literature Prize. She still has a tendency to wander, but is mostly to be found either in London or in Italy with her wife and their family of dogs and chickens. There you go. If you have the opportunity to read it, I highly recommend it. It is beautifully written and fun. also. Also a little bit sad, because one of the premises that she presents is that humanism is kind of a weak, sad, and easily defeated thing. And there's plenty of times in history when humanists have been mown down like grass. But her other point is that those of us who are humanists, and I hope that is most of us most of the time, keep letting it pop back up again, because really it's the only way to live. So thank you, Sarah Bakewell, and this was great. I think I ordered this from one of my UK bookshops because I couldn't wait for it to come to the US. All right. Here's one which is part of a very new obsession of mine. This one's called Time and Timekeepers. This was a gift. Oh boy. This is a book. It's a book on clocks, horology, the history and science of clocks and watches. And it was originally published in 1929. It was reprinted. This particular one was reprinted in 1941. Let's see if I'm correct. This is an American gent, Willis Millen. 1944, this one was reprinted, and it's full of pictures of clocks, it's worth it for just the pictures alone. But he talks at fairly great and not scientific, but practical extent on how a clock works, the parts of the clock, some famous clocks. And of course, this is all because I started having this bee in my bonnet about building. Hey there, John. Yeah, you said you Mupplewick. Yeah, I want to build an orrery, so I don't think I have the chops for it right now. So not that I have the chops for building a clock, but I've decided I'm going to build a clock, because if I build a clock, I may, if I figure it out, be able to build an orrery. They run on gears. So later on, maybe if I get that far, I will share the adventures, the fails, the misadventures of building a clock from a pattern. It's not a kit. It is a pattern. You cut out the paper and you glue it onto wood and cut it really carefully and put it together really carefully. And hopefully when you're done, you have something that actually works. We'll see. Interesting. Anyway, so I have acquired at least that one book on clocks, and I've been checking a lot of books on horology out of the library, so we'll see how that goes. Right, and a very recent gift from some very good friends of mine is Dharma Land, biography of Allen Ginsberg. I'm not really a biography person, but I will be now because I kind of like Allen Ginsberg, and this ought to be interesting. Actually, I kind of like Allen Ginsberg a lot. The guy, huge guy. So I have not yet started this one. I was gifted it a couple days ago, so I am looking forward to setting in on it. It's kind of a chunky book. I have 2 more chunky books yet to show. It is 766 pages, including the index, and, well, we'll see. Maybe a while, but, books, time, life, we just read them, hopefully get on with things. There you go. Dharma Land. I have no idea how it's going to be. Haven't even started it. So I got 2 more which are in progress and probably will be for quite a while. One of them is this beautiful, chunky History of Mathematics that I read. I read a review of somewhere in probably one of my Instagram follows, Carl Boyer's book, and it is fascinating. I've done a couple of little excerpt pics from it just as illustrations on one of my other videos, but I am actually trying to read it from cover to cover, and when I get to bits I don't know, which is a lot of the time, I sort of skip over them and say, hey, maybe in another lifetime. But it's very interesting and it's beautifully written, and it has so much content. Values of pi, Regiomontanus, whatever, Bezout and elimination. So a lot of things that it says it's history, and it does actually do that historical thing where you find out about interesting, famous, important mathematicians in their time and the time that they were in. But there's also a lot of math in here, which you can work them out if you want, if you can, or just admire those who can and continue on. Analysis in France. But this one ends. I think this one ends with, what does it end with? It ends with tables, chronological tables. It ends with, let's see, bibliography. bibliography. Meh. The bibliography, so aspects of the 20th century. So it does actually touch base. I could read the table of contents. That would give me a better idea. It does end with one chapter on integration and measure, functional analysis, and general topology. That one is interesting, but really past my pay grade. Modern algebra and how it appears now. Differential geometry, tensor analysis. After World War II, probability, homological algebra. Well, I'm lost now, but very interesting. Anyway, so I am kind of not too far along in this guy, but it's an adventure. And the last one is a set. There's 6 in it. Oxford History of Western Music by Richard Taruskin, who died a couple of years ago. Actually, it's last year. And I have his magnum opus. Now, yes, was a music student, and yes, I have Grout, and I've read Grout painfully many times, studied it for exams and so forth. But Richard Taruskin wrote the work. It is 6 volumes, and each volume is way longer than Grout, so it's just much more extensive. And Professor Taruskin was an expert in ancient music, so this first book actually gets deep into analysis. You can see here there's a sample of, on one side there's a sample of a page, an actual page, and on the other side, and there's a lot of this, is the interpretation of it, or just writing out of it in note values that we would understand with something resembling a clef, and the words, and then full of history and how it goes along with. So this is it's a very important work, and it's kind of like reading an encyclopedia from cover to cover. Maybe I'll finish it, maybe I won't, but it's pretty interesting along the way. Anyway, that does it for my gallimaufry for today. Hopefully this is going to be my reintroduction to BookTube, and hopefully I will not be such a stranger. My library, as you see it behind me, has kind of grown since the last time. It's also in disarray because we're dealing with dry rot and construction problems with the outside of the building, which is part of my library. So you can't see to one side of me, but it's full of toolboxes and pieces of wood and stuff and whatever. But I do have my library mostly here for me to read in and enjoy all of my books, all of them, all 11,025 of them. Oh boy. Anyway, nice to see you all again, and I hope to speak with you anon, and take care for now. Bye-bye.